Hello and welcome to Weekly Wildlife Wisdom. It's Friday, 10 o'clock here in the UK. It's a bit cloudy and looks like it might rain shortly, so I've had to put my lights on today. Never quite sure what the temperature's going to be like or what the weather's going to be up to at the moment. But more importantly, we're going to be talking about rats today. And I always am fascinated by the reaction from us human folk in the main to rats, and so I thought it'd be really interesting to talk a little bit about our view of them and how that affects ourselves and what we can learn from them, because they are absolutely amazing beings. So rat wisdom, I called it misunderstood masters, because they are definitely masters in their own right. But they're so misunderstood. They're one of the species, and unfortunately there's quite a few, that are vilified dreadfully by human folk. And I know not all of us feel like that, but there are a lot of people. And I think it's almost something that's sort of inground into a lot of us. And one of the primary things that I think people have had sort of conditioned into them is the memory of the Black Death in Europe way back when, and the poor rats were blamed for causing the Black Death. Now, I am not a fact checker, but I have done a bit of reading up on this, and I've heard various scientists talking about it. And I read an article recently in Nat Geo, and they were saying that there has been scientific evidence provided now to suggest that it was actually human lice and parasites that spread the Black Death, not the rats, who were completely blamed for it. And they've had such persecution. So I'm here to stand up for the rats, really. So I don't know how you feel. Susie, hello, Susie. She's saying, I love rats, as you can guess. Laugh out loud. I had a thought and a feeling that you probably would, Susie. She's saying we have the black variety here. Yeah. And again, you see, there's lots of different sorts of rats all around the world, and they do have their sort of subtle energies and wisdom that's slightly different. But when I do weekly wildlife wisdom, what I try to do is sort of do a little bit of an overview of the species themselves, so that you get a feel for what it is within them, their unique essence and reason for being, and how that fits into our quantum hologram inside of us, of all species in all energies and wisdom, and how we can help ourselves to rebalance that. So let's just see. Susie's said, yes, I saw that. The rag trade. Not sure what you mean by that, Susie. Give me a bit more on that if you can, my lovely. The rag trade, ... That's all I can see. I don't know whether there's more to your comment than that. So let me start just by giving you a heads up as to why rats came knocking on my door for weekly wildlife wisdom. We feed the birds in our side, at the moment it's in our side garden. We tend to move the feeding stations around. And over the last couple of weeks, Mother rat had been coming out of a little burrow that she'd made near to where the seeds are on the floor. And she'd initially sort of been testing out whether it was safe. And then she brought one of her little babies. And then gradually, as time gone on, up until culmination of the middle of this week, all of the family have been coming. So there's been about 18 or 20 of these beautiful beings, various stages of growth, some very, very small and some rather larger. And my lovely hubby, David, who is very compassionate and kind towards animals, started to say, oh, they're making me feel a little bit sort of a little bit unnerved, because there's so many of them and they all move together. And so we sort of started talking about it, and I found it very interesting that they turned up. So I sort of followed that that intuitive nudge from them to look more into rats. So this idea that there is a collective consciousness in humanity, I totally believe it. I believe there's a consciousness across all species that's not vocal, it's not emailed, it's something that passes energetically from being to being. And I think this fear of rats, alongside snakes and bats and you name it, there's so many different animals that many humans have gathered over probably a very long period of time. Phobias and real fears and misunderstandings. Well, let's have a look. Susie's saying, coming back to, yes, I saw that, the rag trade, bedclothes, like the scene in the story of Scrooge. I understand. Yes, thank you, Susie. So, yes, where was I? So he started talking about this, and I started considering what's it all about. And then I started thinking about why is it that us humans will tend to want to polarize on issues. So rats are beautiful. If we replaced rats with rabbits, for example, for those of us that have different feelings about rabbits, we might say, oh, isn't it lovely? We've got 20 rabbits in the garden. Because there's 20 rats, a lot of people would have a similar reaction to David. Oh, I'm not sure. Oh, are they dirty? Are they going to bring disease? When in truth, they are wild animals. They're living their own life. They're searching for food. And when they find food, they're maximizing that opportunity, which if you look at our own species, you could say that we do the same thing. And there are quite a lot of us on the planet, as an understatement. So it's interesting, isn't it? And I can also take that further and just plop this in, where we sometimes get fed a lot of information that might be right or wrong, and we polarize and say this is right and this is wrong, or they're right and they're wrong, or this belief is right and this belief is wrong. And I think us humans, unfortunately, because we've got this tendency to polarize and to try and figure things out logically, we can tend to get ourselves into some misunderstandings. So I just want to plant that seed about things that we might be believing in our lives, where we're polarizing and we're not really willing to look at what else might be going on here. What might I not be seeing? What might I be misunderstanding? Or what might I have misunderstood and need to look at again, perhaps with the blinkers off, without being so categorical. So I'm going to leave that one there. That's a big human question for how we live our lives, and I include myself in that, obviously, as well. But so back to rats specifically, because I'm keen to share who they are in truth, rather than perhaps this big story that we've created about them in general society. And again, what I tend to find with human phobia and fear is that it's normally when we have come into close contact with a species in their own natural environment, and we've started to want to make that our environment, and then we've got this overlap, and that can be where we find there is a lack of understanding, mutual understanding and respect. So that can be where it happens, and it certainly is in modern days, where humans are encroaching so much into wild territories and then converting it into our land and our civilization. So who are rats in truth? Because I want to get into this. That first bit I think is really important for you to ponder and just think about for yourself, and how you live in your constructed inner world and what your beliefs are. So if we were to describe rats as people, you probably would agree with me that they sound like pretty well balanced people. So let me run you through what I was pondering around rats and what I was observing, because there were seeds on the floor and these lovely rats were coming out, and they weren't just eating the surface level. seeds, like the birds and the rabbits and other beings come and eat from the seeds on the floor. They were really sort of starting to burrow into the soil, and they got far more perhaps of the trampled down seeds from previous feedings than any of the birds or any of the other animals that I've seen coming for the seeds. And they were really, really resourceful. And I think that's one of the key things about rats, is they are very smart and they are problem solvers and they are super resourceful. So because they're sharp and they are very aware, they can look at circumstances and adapt very quickly and find the best ways through. They're also excellent at recycling and repurposing things. So you'll find that rats will adapt human-made structures and help create them into useful structures or supports for their own life, which of course we don't like, because we don't like it when they come into our territory. But of course, they've been around a lot longer than we have, and we are encroaching. So it's actually us that are going into their territory. But there is, there's a need for us to be able to coexist, and that's so important. And I'm not suggesting that, it's acceptable to have rats running around in our house. That's not really going to work. But there are ways and ways of dealing with that. So this beautiful resilience, this resourcefulness, recycling, repurposing, really shrewd and knowing. And in the Celtic tradition, we call that kenning. It's a deep, intuitive knowing beyond any verbal language or qualification. It's about being able to sense and intuit into your current circumstance and bring to light the best adaptive response to any situation. And rats are magnificent at this. They really are. And a key part of that is that they work together as a community. And humanity, again, is really struggling, I think, in many parts of the world with the fragmentation and the loss of community support and love and compassion. And so if we were to look at rats, as I say, as humans and forget at maybe our preconceived beliefs about rats, if we have them, and think of them as human beings, we'd say, wow, they're amazing, aren't they? Look how effective they are and how they care for their family when there's sickness or elderly rats. They take care of them. They bring food to them. They make sure that they're safe. They protect them. When they're young, they teach them how to be resourceful, how to find the best places for them to find food. So that's on the one hand. On the other side of their purpose, rats are amazing because they are sort of a mid-level tier. They're between prey and they are a prey animal predominantly, but they will sometimes eat other smaller beings as well. So there's sort of a dual prey predator. But they also eat lots of seeds and spores, and they burrow and dig. So they are major distributors of seeds, spores, nuts, which are obviously needed by the greater biosphere. So they're hugely important for that. They also provide and sacrifice themselves. Reluctantly, obviously. They don't want to die, but they will do everything they can to stay alive. But inevitably, they do get hunted on by all sorts of different predators. So they provide food and the sustainability of other species. So they're hugely important in many, many ways. And so what I guess I'd like you to think about for yourself today, if you choose to, take what you like and leave the rest, is how do your beliefs and values about other species fare in terms of being balanced and considered and compassionate? Do you take into account their overall purpose in the world? Do you even know what that is and how important it is? And do you connect yourself as a human being with other species as relatives, different species, but relatives. And we're all part of nature and we all have a role to play. And then within that, on the specific rat wisdom and energy, how well are you living your life in balance and peace? Are you this super effective being? And I know we all have our good days and our not so good days, but are there things that we can do in our life to live and be more in this energy that the rats show to us? Resourcefulness, community spirited and caring for each other, adapting and thinking through problems and coming up with solutions, integrating into new environments and changing when things are changing around us. And I think if we can all work in small baby steps on that, then rat wisdom will have played a very positive role for us. And yeah, I just love to encourage you to maybe see rats with new eyes if you need to. I know, Susie, you don't need to talk because I'm sure you absolutely love them as well. And yeah, just to think a bit more about, you know, the whole place of wildlife and nature in this world, and how important they all are and how important we are as well. But I think the challenge for us humans is to think that we need to work harder, we need to work differently, because we are, one of our purpose and energy is about co-creating and our logical mind. So becoming a balance and walking that middle way where we are fair, firm but fair, and compassionate and kind, where we are willing to listen to others or to learn about others and to tolerate and be a fairer human being and to human better, as I've heard that phrase used a few times recently. So that's probably about it for today on rats. Let's have a look. Susie says, I think fleas are the only creatures I struggle not to be sympathetic to for the sake of the cats. Oh, that's an interesting one. So yeah, there are species, aren't there? A lot of people say to me about mosquitoes and snakes and spiders and all sorts. So again, I guess what I'd encourage is, you know, do a bit of reading, find out a bit more about them, what role they play and why they're here. And, you know, and then how we can live alongside them and live with them and do what we can, but without causing harm, you know, in a way that harms across the biosphere, which unfortunately we can tend to do as humans. We look for a quick fix. We look for, you know, if we need to grow crops, let's get rid of anything that damages the crops, and then we're killing all of the insects and then their predators along and up the food chain. So it's thinking about how can we do that without causing further harm. And it is tricky. I'm not saying it's easy, but I would encourage us all to just sort of examine that and think about that. And that obviously extends also to our human relatives as well and how we live. I think we are in the throes of a very difficult time for human collective consciousness, and all of us who are willing to search and grow and evolve to a place of balanced living are going to make a difference. So I encourage you to think about that and to act on that. So quite a deep weekly wildlife wisdom this week. So thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've certainly enjoyed sharing and reading and learning more about rats as well, and observing them in the garden. And yeah, so have a ponder about that. I'll be back, fingers crossed, all being well, next Friday, 10 o'clock UK time. I don't know which species it'll be yet, but they always appear, and I'll put a little reminder up normally around midweek to let you know and to give you a reminder. So thank you so much for watching. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you, Susie. It's lovely to have you here live. And yeah, if you've got any questions or any comments, feel free to comment. I'd love to hear from you. If you've got any suggestions for weekly wildlife wisdom, let me know. Susie's asking fleas. Oh, that could be an interesting one, couldn't it? Should add them to my list, Susie. And I will be back here in a week, all being well. So take good care, be gentle, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. And I look forward to being back here again next week. Lots of love. Take care for now. Bye.